Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We've just discussed the establishment of this new little country and state, shall I say, of Medina Munawwara, which is now the Islamic country, shall we say. And then the treaty and the constitution of Medina, and those who had wanted to be part of Medina and the society had to buy into that constitution. That was to secure a kind of a peaceful environment and a safe environment, a sanctuary for all those people who lived in Medina, and it worked beautifully, like I said, until one day. But in Medina, the moral and the spiritual training of the Sahaba continued, because now everybody practically was Muslim, and yes, there were elements of the Jews that were there as well. There were elements of the munafiqeen, people who are opportunistic, hoping to score off of the back of Islam with the kind of benefits that they were to be had, but not actually accept Islam, right? But with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam now teaching openly and everybody openly practicing Islam, a very beautiful environment was created. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's methodology of teaching was also amazing. First and foremost, he would repeat things he said 3 times so that everybody could hear it and nobody could doubt, like, oh, he said Fajr Salah is 2 rakats. And then, broken telephone. So now he would say it 3 times so that whoever heard it the first time would hear, second time the same thing, third time the same thing, and be 100% sure of what they'd heard. He would then speak clearly and deliberately. And this is one of the beautiful things that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Jawami'ul Kalim. Jawami'ul Kalim is a miracle of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the sense that he would say a single phrase of a few words. And those few words were so meaningful, they had so much packed into them that like for instance the simple hadith إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى, that everything is based on intention, right? Actions are based on intentions, and every man will get only what he intended. Now the extent to which the scholars of hadith have gone to explain the meaning of that and the different ways it can apply in terms of fiqh, in terms of your spirituality, in terms of your daily life, in terms of your routine. One statement, إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Actions are based on intentions, or actions are motivated by intentions, or actions, so many different translations as well. So he would, the main thing I'm trying to get at is he would say a single statement with a few words that had so much meaning, but you remember those few words and they stay with you. And it's not hard to memorize them. It's not difficult, or it's very difficult to forget a simple statement like that, right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was always moderate, and he would choose an appropriate place and time to teach people, right? So this is something that I actually gleaned from Sheikh Zulfiqar Naqshbandi, that always pray as a parent specifically, or as a leader, as an imam, as an alim, as a sheikh, as a father, as a parent, or as a teacher, that Allah must inspire you, that you must impart the correct lesson at the most appropriate time, in the most appropriate way, so that your students or the people, your subordinates who are receiving this lesson and this message, they must be susceptible to receive it. They must actually be open to receiving it. For instance, that perfect incident, a person comes into the masjid and is urinating in the masjid. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't immediately stand up and teach him the lessons of the masjid. No, actually, brother, we need to respect the masjid of Allah. This is not the kind of thing we do. Masjid is for salah and for prayer, and it must be kept clean at all times. Sahaba got upset. He told him, sit down, let him finish. Otherwise, he's going to urinate all over the place. And when he was done, sent someone to go and fetch a bucket and pour. It wasn't like our masjids today. Today, you don't go and fetch a bucket and pour. Today, you phone a carpet cleaning company, and they come and clean the carpets, right? In those days, it was sand. The water would seep into the ground, and taharatul ard yubsuha, when the earth becomes dry, it then becomes clean. So he poured the bucket of water over it, the urine kind of seeped in, it got dry, it became clean again, right? But the point is, he didn't immediately reprimand him. When he was done, another Sahabi sneezed in Salah, and he says, Alhamdulillah. Other Sahaba kind of looked at him and like, why are you looking at me? And he started fighting with him in Salah for looking at him. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say anything then. After Salah, he called him. He said, brother, Salah is for worshipping Allah, for speaking to Allah, for reading Quran and tasbih, and so on. The other thing is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would ask them questions to kind of make them think. He would then also ask, does anybody have a question? Did anybody see a dream? He would use visual aids. There are instances where he used to draw graphs and things like this. And this is how the nurturing continued at their hands, right? He would make them feel comfortable asking him questions, right? But at the same time, they had so much respect for him that they would hope that a Bedouin who wasn't kind of well-mannered would come and just randomly ask a question, because they would literally pull him by the back of his shirt. Hey, Muhammad, I got a question for you, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it would just happen live. Then they would get the answer. Sahaba used to wait for someone to do that because they were so respectful of him, in such awe of him, and they had so much love and adoration from him that they were too scared to ask a question that might be disrespectful or that might anger him. Because another thing is, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would become angry when it was time to become angry. He wouldn't just become angry for nothing, right? Now, as much as their nurturing continued, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also wanted their nurturing to continue in a different way. So the treaty was signed, but there were little skirmishes happening all along the edges of Medina, the outskirts of Medina. Now the kuffar of Makkah also didn't stop. The kuffar of Makkah also didn't give up, that, oh, now they're just going to go to Medina and leave them alone. They didn't leave them alone in Abyssinia, which was in a different continent. Why would they leave them alone in Medina? So the Quraysh then decide, you know what, let's pool all our resources, go to Syria, do business, buy arms, come back with swords and arms and whatevers, and we bring it back to Makkah. We launch a massive attack and we completely eradicate the whole Medina and everyone in it. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a genius, a military genius, obviously inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he had obviously, because of one of the parts of having an Islamic country, having a country or state in general, is to have intelligence. So he had his agents all around gathering intelligence for the safety of the inhabitants of Medina Munawwara, and they get the news of this is what's happening in Makkah. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam calls the Sahaba together and he says, you know what, we'll wait for them to come back from Syria with this entire caravan of armor and weapons and stuff, and we'll then waylay them and we take their weapons. Now, in the greater scheme of things, you might think to yourself, but it's unprovoked and you can't just steal people's things, and that's not how it works. There's a treaty. Everyone inside is supposed to be safe of the treaty. Outside of the treaty, those people who are not obliged to, or not held by the treaty, they were not supposed to help, but they were actually participating with people part of the treaty to breach it, right? And not only that, are you just going to sit back and watch? It's like, for instance, we're sitting here in Rivonia today, actually in Rivonia, and we get news that the people of Florida, where I'm from, are importing guns and a truckload of bombs from Durban. It's passing here by Rivonia, and they're going to then take it to Florida. They're going to get their soldiers together and they're going to come and bomb Rivonia to smithereens. Are we just going to sit and wait for that to happen? You can't. You have to do something proactive to stop it. So like that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did something proactive. The idea was probably along the lines of, we're going to waylay the caravan, we're going to take the caravan from them, and then it's going to come to Medina, we're going to have all those weapons and arms. If they want their weapons and arms back, then they must pay us again. You understand? Then they must pay us again. That way we'll have money to buy our own weapons and arms if they want to take theirs back to Makkah, right? And that is what became the prelude to the whole Battle of Badr. Now, I'm not going to go into a lengthy discussion of the Battle of Badr. It was supposed to just be intercept the caravan, take all the stuff, and go back to Medina. And it became the most decisive battle in the history of Islam, with 313 soldiers in literally their lungis and their kurtas and a little ceremonial dagger, taking on an entire army of military men, soldiers clad from head to toe in steel, with all kinds of weapons that they just bought from Syria, the best weapons, brand new weapons, and they lost. They lost. But Allah, like I said in the beginning of our series, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to achieve something and wants something to happen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will facilitate that for you. Hey? So when they got to Badr, the kuffar had already kind of settled in a space where the sand was hard and there was a well. The Muslims walked into Badr, they were on the side where there was very loose kind of beach sand. There was no well, okay? So now your camels are struggling to walk, you can't really pitch a tent. They're sorted there, they're busy having their braais and the tents are set, they're pulling water from the well, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets it rain torrentially. What then happens is the soft sand on this side became hard because of the torrential rain and people walking on it. They were able to pitch their tents comfortably. They put their skins out, so what they did was they would put pegs in the ground and then tie the skins to the pegs to make like a trough, and then the rain would fall and fill up those skins with water. So now they had water. In the meantime, on the other side where the sand was hard, the rain came down and it became mud, and they were slipping and sliding all over the place, and things just became very unpleasant for them. And that already kind of dampened their spirits and broke their morale a bit. And in the battle itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent angels to assist the Muslims in that battle, right? Um, Then comes the whole discussion on what to do with the prisoners of war that we got from the Battle of Badr. As we know, they had to pay ransom for them. And one of the things was that you had to teach. If you, as a prisoner of war, knew how to read and write, you had to teach some of the children in Medina, how to read and write. Right? That was a bad one. So Badr has now been concluded. The Muslims have won. They've got the prisoners of war. They got the spoils. The children are being taught how to read and write as a part of their ransom. And it's a year and a half later, and now the Battle of Uhud is taking place. And this was also very decisive battle for the Muslims, a battle that opened their eyes greatly, that taught them a very important lesson, that no matter how well equipped you are, you need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Never think that, oh, my strength is in my numbers, and oh, we've got good weapons, so we're going to win. That's not how it works with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the Battle of Uhud, as we know, it was, they thought they had won, and then they went onto the battlefield to collect the spoils. Meantime, at the time, Khalid bin Walid wasn't Muslim. He came around the back and they attacked the Muslims freshly, and they lost quite a number of lives and learned a great lesson in life, and that is to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even when you perceive yourself to have the upper hand. Our next lesson is going to be on Hudaybiyah and what leads up to the what's it called? Conquest of Makkah and the significant events that took place with regards to that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with understanding. May Allah grant us that we can imbibe the lessons that we learn. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with love and true adoration for Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Like the Sahaba had, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and accept all our du'as. Subhanallah bihamdih, subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.